I've been a financial planner for nearly 20 years, and when it comes to retirement, one of the most important and oftentimes misunderstood topics is CPP, the Canadian Pension Plan. We've done well over 50 videos on this channel breaking down the ins and outs of CPP. And in this video, I've compiled some of the most important topics that I believe every Canadian should know. Now, we won't dive into every single detail, but by the end of this video, you should have a solid understanding of what CPP is, learn about some of the common misconceptions, and discover a powerful new tool to help you calculate how much CPP you could receive in retirement. So let's kick things off with the basics. Who's actually eligible for CPP? Let's start with eligibility. So for the Canadian Pension Plan, CPP, you can qualify for collection of CPP any time between the age of 60 and 70, and as long as you've made at least one payment into the Canadian Pension Plan. The Canadian Pension Plan is a retirement benefit that is something you pay into while you are working. So as long as you're 60 years old, you can start to take the Canadian Pension Plan, but you can also delay it all the way till 70. I'll cover that off later in this video. So the application process can be done either online or through a paper application. And I strongly recommend you do the online application. It's much quicker, and the online applications are known to be processed that much faster. So if you're looking to apply, make sure you apply through your Service Canada website online and not through the paper application. So just plan ahead. It doesn't matter if you're starting it between 60 or 70. Whenever you do want to start it, I would apply ahead. And you can note, like if you're going to apply right now in January of 2024, but you want to start it in May, you can put that on the application. So you can apply ahead of time for a future start date. Okay, I'm sure one of the big questions you all have is, how much CPP will you actually collect in retirement? Well, in 2024, the maximum monthly amount if you started CPP at 65 was $1,364.20, while the average as of July 2024 was only $815. But what about your situation? At the end of this video, I'll share a new CPP calculator that will help you calculate your personal numbers. But before we get into that, let me touch on a few key factors that will determine how much you'll actually receive. Firstly, CPP is based on how much you contribute over your working years. Every year, there's a set maximum, which is determined by the year's YMPE, the year's maximal pensionable earnings. The more you contribute, the more you'll get out of CPP. Secondly, the number of years you contribute also matter. Years where you earn little or no income can reduce your benefit. However, there are provisions like the general dropout provision and child rearing provision that can exclude lower income years from the calculation, which will help increase your benefit. We'll touch on this more when we get to the CPP calculator later in this video. Thirdly, the age you decide to start CPP is super important. You can start CPP as early as 60 or delay up to age 70. If you start before age 65, your benefit is reduced by 0.6% every month. If you start after age 65, your benefit will increase by 0.7% every month. I want to dig deeper into this third factor because CPP timing can have a huge impact on how much you will collect. Let's walk through an example using our financial planning software to show just how much a difference starting at 60, 65, or 70 can make. To start with, we're going to look at CPP at age 60. So we have a 55-year-old client, single person making $85,000 a year. Their employment income will grow with inflation over the next 5 years. They're planning to retire at 60. We've left the CPP at 60, old age security at 65, which is the earliest they can take that. Again, we're not looking at OAS in this video, just CPP. So again, just one level of many levels that you need to be looking at with your planner. So we put CPP at 60, maximum 80% at age 65. So it's going to be reduced slightly because they're taking it early. They also have a few assets. So I'll just quickly go through that. We've left all this data the same in all three scenarios. The only number we're changing is when they're taking their CPP. So this person has a $400,000 RRSP, $95,000 in the TFSA, and a $300,000 LIRA from a previous employer. So when this client came to us, they said, look, Adam, I think I'm ready for retirement. I need just a little bit less than what I'm collecting now, which was they were living off about $60,000 a year after tax. So what we did is we started the CPP at 60, and you can see here, without any tax planning around the drawdown of RSP, TFSA, and that, just looking at CPP, he's going to have around $53,599 after tax, adjusted for inflation every year, and this goes down to age 90. So that is his income through retirement if he decides to take CPP at 60. So let's look at, well, if you delay to 65, how much more could you get potentially? So here we have Mr. YouTube, same client, same income, everything's the same, except we bumped his CPP all the way till 65 versus age 60. And you can see that the income bump is $55,215. That's $1,616 every single year after tax for 30 years of retirement. That's a lot of money. So if you're thinking about, well, 60, 65, a lot of you, the average is age 62. A lot of you take it too early. He's putting in extra $1,600 after tax in his pocket every year. I don't know any retiree that wouldn't take that deal. At age 70, again, everything else being equal, we've been able to bump his income up to $56,146. So if we look at the difference between taking it at 60, which was his original intention, and age 70, which might be the best decision, a total difference of $2,547. That's a lot of dollars every single year after tax in his pocket. It's over $200 a month of extra spending. So if you're considering like timing around, you need to go through this process with your financial planner. When we look at the difference between CPP and 60-65, it was around $2,500 a month. Now that is after tax and adjusted to inflation. So if we extrapolate that out over his retirement from age 60 to age 90, life expectancy, we're going to look at, well, how much extra money does he actually collect in his pocket, which is the nominal amount of money he will collect. And when we break that down and look at the nominal dollar amount, it actually equates to $119,000 extra money in his pocket. So for those of you looking to add $119,000 extra in their retirement pocket, this would be a good strategy for you. And again, this is Mr. YouTube's strategy. This is his numbers, his option, but I bet yours don't look too different. So again, make sure you work through this simple step with your financial planner. When is the best time for you, based on everything you have going on, to take your CPP? When you hit retirement, I tell people all the time, when you hit retirement, you have a lot of income sources. You have, in this case, he has a LIRA, an RSP, a TFSA, a CPP, and his OAS. He's got 5 income sources. He can turn some on, not turn some on, flex it a little bit. There's a lot more options. So for someone that's an employee that collects a paycheck, not a lot of tax flexibility, you gain that flexibility when you hit retirement, and you need to make sure you take real good advantage of it and run these numbers. Again, you may run these numbers and say, you know what, Adam, $119,000 isn't worth it for me. I can't get past the psychological barrier. I'm taking my CPP at 60. That's fine. You just got to make sure that that $53,000 in this case is enough to survive on. You need to know the potential consequence of taking it earlier. And I know a lot of the comments are flowing below of saying, yeah, Adam, but I'm going to die at 65 or 70. Statistically, you're not. And a lot of you use life expectancy at birth. Look, if you're 60 or 65 retiring, you need to look at life expectancy at that age. A 65-year-old couple, the chances one of you live into 90s is close to 50%. Like, it's high. You're going to live to your late 80s, early 90s. Historically, I actually ran a life expectancy on myself the other day, and it said 98. I don't know if I want to live that long, but that's what it's telling me now. So again, for younger people, you're probably going to live a lot older than even your parents are currently doing. So something to keep in mind as you look at your planning. One thing I've learned from being in the business for nearly 20 years is that even though I can show that for 99% of you, it's better to delay your CPP to 70 or close to it, many people still choose to take it early. In fact, the average person starts their CPP at age 62. So let's go through some of the most common reasons I hear for people wanting to start CPP at 60, and why, in many cases, those reasons might not be as justifiable as they seem. Reason number 1 to take your Canadian pension plan at age 60, and this to me is the number 1 reason you should, is you have a shortened life expectancy. Now, there's 2 ways to look at this. You actually have, statistically, a shortened life expectancy. Like a doctor, someone's told you, you are not going to live past whatever age. Pick your age. The other one is, well, a family history. Now, I said this earlier, my grandpa passed away recently at age 89. No one else in his family lived even close to that age. I think most people in his family died in their early 60s. So don't base your life expectancy off everybody else in your family, because it may not be reality and it may cost you a lot of money making your CPP decision based on that. But if you truly have a shortened life expectancy, you definitely want to consider taking your Canadian pension plan at age 60. The second reason a lot of you take your CPP at 60 is to get the money and invest it. So instead of leaving it in the CPP pool, you start collecting it and you take that money and you invest it. Now, ideally, you put it, if you're still working, you put it back in your RSP. You kind of avoid the tax, so you have income coming in from your CPP, and then you get the deduction going out. So it's a net neutral in the tax position. And now you invest that money, you make it work for yourself. But here's the thing. There's a massive deduction taking it early. Again, 0.6% every single month that you take it early. So you're losing out a lot of money, 36% if you take it early. And if you actually calculate it the other way, there's a bigger benefit going the other way, how much it increases every year by waiting. But the reality is you need to get about 6%, 7% a year just to break even. Can you do that? Like 7.2% on an annual basis. It's not guaranteed. Whereas leaving it in the pool is guaranteed to grow by that rate. You're going to have more down the road. So just be careful. Again, I'm not going to break down all the numbers. Investment returns are going to play a big factor in this. Taxes, can you shelter it in an RSP? How are you going to pull it out later? What's your tax situation? Again, there's a lot more moving parts. It's not just a simple take the money, invest it, get a better rate of return than 7.2%. Because in retirement, you have a lot of different income silos. And a lot of you put your blinders on and you look at each silo individually. And that's the biggest tax mistake you can make. The third reason you might want to consider taking CPP early is to avoid OAS clawback. So if you're going to have a bit of a higher income later, the theory here is let's take CPP early at 60. It's going to be a reduced amount, but we're going to get lower for longer. And because we have lower later, it means that our overall income is going to be less. Thus, we're going to avoid OAS clawback. But just be aware, you're taking less CPP forever. Is there a better strategy? Well, typically when we run this for clients, the RSP meltdown might be a better strategy. So before you jump into it and take CPP at 60 to help you avoid OAS clawback, talk to your financial advisor, talk to your financial planner, and see if there's a better way to do it. Maybe actually delaying CPP to 70 and melting down your RSP and leveling it out that way might be better for you. Again, I don't know, but a lot of times when we run these situations, it is. The next two are around contributions and what you've done into CPP. So the first one is you've already had 8 or more years of low or no income at all. So again, the way the CPP calculation has worked is when you start to take it, they basically knock off 17% of your lower years. If you take it at 65, it basically works out to 8 years. So let's call it 7 to 8 years they're going to knock off. So if you've already had that many years where you haven't contributed to CPP, the more non-contributory years, the more it will affect your overall CPP payment that you'll collect. So a lot of people say, look, Adam, I've already had a lot of no income years. I need to take it at 60 so I don't avoid, 60 to 65 is going to be 5 more years that I don't contribute to the CPP. That's going to affect my CPP. I'm going to get less. It's not beneficial for me. The reality is the calculation, yeah, it works that way, but it's not as affecting as you might think. The other reason is that you've contributed the maximum amount by age 60. So you've hit your 39 years of max payment in there. You can't make another dollar to increase. Like you've maxed it out. And you said, Adam, you know what? I've already put in the max. I'm just going to take it at 60 and run it forward. Whereas if you're still working from 60 to 65, you're contributing to the pool, but you're not actually getting anything out of it because you've already maxed it out. So again, does it make sense to start it? Continue to pay into it maybe, post-retirement benefit. I won't get into that in this video. We have another video on that. You can watch that. Run these numbers. It might make sense, it might not, but run the numbers. I always go back to running the numbers. It's not an emotional decision. It's a financial decision. You have to know what the numbers look like on the other side. The sixth reason most people take their CPP at 60 would be you need the money, right? Maybe you're working, maybe you're not working. The reality is that extra $300, $500, $600 a month, that makes a big difference in your pocket. And you need the money now. Now, my caution around this is, yes, you might need the money now, and I get that. But are there better ways or better areas that you should grab that income from? Again, delaying that CPP is a good bump. It's guaranteed income. It's adjusted to inflation. It's inflation protected. There's a lot of benefits, trust me, to delay that CPP. Like the way the calculation works on CPP is it balloons itself. So if you're starting with a smaller balloon, it'll never get as big as it could get. Whereas taking assets, income from elsewhere might make more sense. But again, if you're someone in that situation where you're like, Adam, I need the money at 60. I can't wait any longer. I have bills to pay. I got to put food on the table. That would be a great reason. So shorten life expectancy, and you absolutely need the money. There's no way around it. There's no other income sources. Those are your top 2 reasons why you might want to take it at 60. Now, another big reason why people want to start CPP at 60 is the belief that it's running out of money. And based on the comments that we get on these videos, I think a lot of you share that concern. But is that actually the case? Well, according to a recent report, we have some answers about the long-term sustainability of CPP. So let's take a closer look. The first article I want to highlight is advisor.ca, which is something I'm subscribed to here. If you haven't checked out advisor.ca, I encourage you to do so. A lot of good articles on there geared for financial planners, but as a consumer, it's very knowledgeable. A lot of insight here. So this is titled Current Fiscal Policy Sustainable Over the Long Term, done by the PBO, or the Parliamentary Budget Officer. Now, who is a Parliamentary Budget Officer? Let's jump into that. So this is a neutral, non-partisan party independent of government. He assists senators and members of parliament in their work. The PBO is responsible for providing economic and financial analysis to Parliament for the purpose of raising the quality of parliamentary debate and promoting greater budget transparency and accountability. So the PBO is independent. Of course, anytime you read research, independent research, like who is the person doing that? Do they stand on one side or the other? Do they have a vested interest in this? So the PBO, no vested interest in this at all. They're coming up with, is this sustainable? Do we need to make changes to the current system so that it's going to be there for younger Canadians when they hit retirement later on? We'll link this article below, but it talks about a few things. So this report aims to identify whether changes to current fiscal policy are required to avoid unsustainable government debt accumulation. So it goes through that, talks about that a little bit, and what percentage of GDP they can spend. Currently, Quebec, Saskatchewan, Nova Scotia, Ontario, and Alberta are fiscally sustainable and have room to increase spending or reduce taxes, ranging from 1.4% of provincial GDP in Quebec to 0.3% in Ontario and elsewhere. So the report also finds that some are fiscally unsustainable. So it talks about that. So again, I encourage you to read this. The part I want to jump to here, and I have another article here in a second, I want to go through this even more important, but the current structure of the CPP and QPP is sustainable over the PBO's 75-year projection horizon. The report said there is a fiscal room to increase benefits or reduce contributions by 0.2% of Canadian GDP for the CPP and 0.3% for Quebec's GDP for the QPP, so long as the net assets to GDP position remains at its initial value after 75 years. So is CPP running out of money? Well, according to the PBO, it's sustainable for at least 75 years. And so the report that they did ran things for 75 years, not just CPP and QPP, but many other factors and numbers. But the CPP and QPP are in a great place for the next 75 years. Now, the next article I want to jump into goes even deeper, and I encourage you to read it. It's over 200 pages, but if you're somebody that's sitting on the fence around CPP, QPP, when should I take it? Is it going to be there? I don't know. A little bit skeptical. I'm probably going to take it early, but it's going to cost me money. I encourage you to read the next article I'm going to show you, because it breaks down all the detail and shows you, hey, what about if rate of returns are better? What about if they're worse? What about inflation? It talks about a lot of the concerns that a lot of you viewers have around CPP and the performance of CPP and the sustainability of CPP. So let's jump into the next article. The CPPIB, the CPP Investment Board, is the committee of professionals that oversees the Canadian pension plan. It's independent from the government, and every 3 years they have to get audited. And you can see here, a major source of strength in the CPP funds long-term resilience. Every 3 years, the Office of the Chief Actuary of Canada, an independent federal body that provides checks and balances of the future costs of CPP, assesses the state of the plan. Now, the last time this was done, it was in December of 2021. It will be done again December of this year, 2024. The report usually takes about 9 or 10 months to come out. So it's a delayed report. There's a lot of research that needs to be done. So in about a year from recording this video, we should have the next report. And I assume, based on where things have been, performance of the plan, we might even be in a better position than what was forecasted in the 2021 report. Now, if you've never heard of the Chief Actuary of Canada, I don't blame you, but it is a third party independent, again, much like the PBO, and you can go to their website and learn a lot more about the Chief Actuary and what they do, how they do it. Again, it's not just a CPP that they run many, many things. So if you're someone with a defined benefit plan in any province, federal, if you work for the armed forces or we're in the armed forces, there's many pension plans that the actuary will review every year, and those actuarial data and reports are on their website. So if you're wondering like how sustainable is my pension, a lot of you that have defined benefit pension plans with the government, like how do you know it's good? Well, it's done in a report every few years by the Actuary of Canada. So again, you can read those reports on the same website. So the actuarial report from December 31st, 2021 is online. We'll link it below so you can read through that. But again, the key highlight there goes back to the same words and language as the PBO, which is the CPP and QPP are sustainable for at least 75 years, and that is stress tested. So much like running out of money in retirement has to be a major concern and be planned out, thought out, built out in a proper retirement plan, running out of CPP money is also a concern, as that's a major income source for many Canadians. You've paid into it, and you need to make sure you're getting your money out of it. So as we read actuarial data like this, reports that are done by professionals that say, look, based on current situation, on worst case, on best case, here's how things lie. And CPP and QPP are in a great place for many, many, many years. In fact, it'll be there for my kids. Based on the current data, it'll be there for my kids who are 5, 7, 9, and 11. That's great information for me to have, knowing that as they start to work and pay into CPP, it's going to be sustainable and something that will provide an income for them in their retirement. Now that we know CPP is here to stay for the long term, let's circle back to the question, how much will you actually collect in retirement? You can get a rough estimate through Service Canada account, so set that up if you don't have that set up already. But there's actually a brand new CPP calculator that's a fantastic tool to help you determine what you might collect at different ages. So let's take a look at how to use the calculator to determine your personalized numbers. I want to jump into the calculator here in a second and go through 4 different examples. I'll also link the calculator below so you can save it to your favorites and start running through different scenarios. What you want to do is figure out how much am I going to get. You can then take that number, give it to your financial planner to incorporate into your retirement plan. Anytime we do a retirement plan for our clients, we want to know with as accurate as possible what your Canadian pension plan is going to be at different ages. And this calculator will give you that. But before I jump into the calculator, I want to give credit where credit is due, and that's the 2 people that created this calculator. So thank you to Braden Warwick and Ben Felix. Now, Ben Felix, you may have heard his name before, who has a big YouTube channel, and we'll link his channel below. They are with PWL Capital, and they put this calculator together, and there's a few other calculators on their website that are fantastic. Great tools. So thank you, Braden. Thank you, Ben, for creating a calculator like this that all of you should be using that will help you get to a better, more accurate number around your Canadian pension plan to allow your retirement plan to be more accurate as well. So here's the view on the PWL Capital calculator. Again, on the left, you can see CPP. They also have a realized or deferred gains and a rent versus buy calculator. So a few other ones. I want to focus on the Canadian Pension Plan or CPP calculator. Now, how this works is you want to go to the right under assumption. So what I've done here, and again, it covers off QPP and CPP, which is great. You can toggle between the 2 here. And then you want to put in your birth date, which will match out your age. So again, I've put in someone that's 59 that turns 60 in January and plans to retire of January 2025. From there, you can put in earnings. Again, future earnings are $0. Now, past income, this is an important part. So what you want to do here is click on the edit button, and you can see here, for what I've done here is I've put in 80% of the max YMPE. So yearly maximal pensionable earnings. And what this is once you've hit a certain amount of earnings, you've maxed out your Canadian pension plan contributions for the year. So in this example, just as an example, I assume that every single year, this person earned 80% of the max, meaning that if they put in all their contributions as far as maxing out the 39 years, they would get essentially 80% of the max CPP. Now, for a lot of you, you're wondering like, well, I don't know how much I made in 1983, Adam. Like, I don't have that data. If you go on Service Canada, you can collect that data and get it for input into here. Again, you can copy paste this into an Excel, edit it, throw it back in here. Very customizable and easy to work with, which is fantastic. So I basically said every year they have worked, this person's worked, and they've earned 80% of YMPE to put in the 80% of the max into CPP. So you can customize your earnings here. The next thing you want to look at is children, and I'll cover this in another example, but for this example, I've put they've had no kids, they've never been on disability, and I put a life expectancy based on FP Canada, so Financial Planner Canada table, and you can actually see here. So you can hover over these things, you can choose your own age if you want to put a custom age in there, you can. I'm just gonna leave it at FP Canada because that's what we use as a guidance. So the last thing we want to look at here is inflation. So expected inflation and expected wage inflation. And so these two things we want to put in, again, it defaults to 2.5 and 3. I would leave it at that. But again, you can play around with these numbers. So if this was me, I would say, look, I'm 59 years old, turning 60 next year, and I plan to retire. No further contributions. So you can see there's some earlier dropout years and some later dropout years that I'm not contributing. And the earlier dropout years are smaller amounts that you paid in. So again, if I had more dropout years later, there wouldn't be any earlier. You can see how much I'm paying in. Now, along the top, you can see I've put in $150,000 into Canadian pension plan. Total received over time will be 401, net benefit, and IRR. Now, I'm not too worried about that in this illustration. What I want to look at is click on CPP age comparison. And you can see here, here's my different amounts. Now, you can go present value, lifetime loss, or benefit. I want to look at my benefit. What am I going to receive on a monthly benefit at different ages? So if I took my Canadian pension plan at age 60, I would get $721 per month. Now, if I wait all the way till 65, I'm going to get $1,203. And if I wait till 70, I'm getting $1,757. So that shows me the difference. Now, again, you can go lifetime loss, meaning that, if I took it at age 60 and I lived to life expectancy, I'm going to lose out on about $150,000. So again, this is where you can play around with life expectancy, break-even points. But what I want to focus on here, and I think a lot of you where you need to focus on, is how much am I going to get at different ages? Now, the biggest mistake I see when it comes to the Canadian pension plan is this. It's a lot of you do a calculation and you figure out your break-even point. So if I take it early versus later, here's my break-even point. So as long as I live past age 78, I'm better delaying. Okay. That's great, but you're looking at your Canadian pension plan in a silo, meaning that you're looking at it on its own. But don't you have other income sources and assets that you're also going to be drawing in on? You have OAS, you have probably a RIF, TFSA, non-reg, pension, there's other assets. Maybe you have a spouse or common law, they also have income coming in. Those other income sources affect CPP, affect the break-even point, affect how everything needs to work together. So a break-even point is just one of the many factors you need to look at. And that break-even point will change depending on what other assets and income you have coming in, because it's going to affect the taxes that you pay total, meaning that that break-even point could actually get scaled back quite a bit or pushed forward potentially as well. So that's where you want to be very careful to not look at some of these calculators. And this is why I like PWL's calculator. It doesn't look at here's your break-even point. It just looks at the hardcore numbers, which I like. Then I can take these numbers, put it into proper planning software, and figure out what the best solution is for you, my client, to figure out what is the best time to take it based on everything else that you have going on. And again, that's the mistake most people make. You look at your Canadian pension plan, old age security, RIF account, TFSA, everything else that you have coming in on an individual basis. Trust me when I say this, we've done thousands of plans for Canadians. The more that you can incorporate everything together, it's a comprehensive plan. Everything needs to funnel down as tight as possible. That will give you the most amount of after-tax income in your pocket and help pay CRA a lot less money, which we all want to do. The second scenario I want to look at is the same situation. So again, I'm 59, retired in January, but this time a little bit different. I have had 2 kids. So in 1990 and 1992, I had 2 kids and I took time off. And you can see that in your earnings. So if I click on earnings, you can see from 1990 all the way up until 1996, I didn't earn any money. I didn't contribute to the Canadian pension plan. So how will that affect me? Again, when you have kids, you have child rearing or dropout years there. So as long as you claim that, then those dropout years maybe don't affect your Canadian pension plan all that much. So if I go into the plan here, you can see I've dropped out those years. Everything else is the same. If I go comparison and go to the benefit, I went from 1,757 to 1,753 at age 70. So even though I didn't pay into CPP for many years, because it was a dropout year due to child rearing, it didn't really affect my overall Canadian pension plan. Again, everyone's situation is going to be a little bit different here, but isn't it wonderful that we can properly look at this and calculate out? Again, you might have had years where it's lower payment in those times, but a nice breakdown showing you that what is the effect of not paying into CPP, or maybe a smaller amount into CPP, over years that I had kids. And you can see again, drop out later in life, when I'm not paying in once I'm retired, in those child rearing years. So again, the more time you have, and you can see the little baby here at the bottom, they've done a great job putting this calculator together just on presentation itself. So spend some time in here. I do want to go through two more quick examples that I think apply to many of you. I talked to a lot of you that have been on CPP disability at some point. And so again, here in disability, I've left everything the same, retiring in January at age 60. But from 2018 to the end of this year, I was on disability. I was unable to work for whatever reason. How does that affect my CPP? And as I go to age comparison and benefit, 1753. So the same as a child rearing, almost the same as having no CPP disability or child rearing. So again, for a lot of you think that I haven't paid in for certain years, it's going to affect me drastically. Not necessarily. The last example I want to show you, which applies to so many of you, is retiring early. Say you are able to retire at 55. That means that from 55 to 65, you're not paying into CPP. And for a lot of you, you default to, I guess I should take CPP early because I'm going to have more dropout years. But the reality is that, yes, you do have more dropout years, and you can see them here. There's lots of dropout time. But when you look at the comparison of benefit, age 60, under $1,000, or if you delay till age 70, you'd have over $2,200. So this again is where you want to work through the software, work through the calculator, and figure out your exact situation to figure out, at the end of the day, what are your numbers so that you can then build that and incorporate that into your overall retirement plan. Now, as I said earlier, this calculator is fantastic, probably the best I've ever seen. It's still missing, in my opinion, one big thing, and I don't know, I haven't had a chance to talk to Ben and Braden about this, but if you're collecting survivor benefit, how does that look? It'd be nice to have a calculator that incorporates survivor benefit to help you decide what's the best time to take my CPP. So I'll push them a bit on that to see if they can add that. But if it ever gets added, or I find a better calculator that covers that, I'll make sure to bring that on the channel so that you have those resources. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, thank you for watching. Obviously, there are many nuances to CPP. So if you're looking for more detailed answers on specific aspects, such as post-retirement benefit, the CPP survivor pension, or CPP disability, make sure to check out our other videos where we dive deeper into these topics. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit the subscribe button and stay tuned for more CPP videos coming soon.